by UDTFF.
Once again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Hey, welcome back to DTFF, everyone. Happy Tuesday evening. Thank you for joining us. We got a great show ahead of us. As you can see, we've got some special guests joining us for this week's episode. I think we could say just annual guests at this point.
Yes.
Especially for this episode. But yeah, we're talking all things AFC North. I know what we're
NFL,
doing.
to be fair.
To be
NFL.
fair.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited I can't even talk right now. Haven't seen
We
your
have that
faces
effect
in
on men.
so long.
That's right.
That
That's
I
right.
just don't even know what to say. But yeah, AFC North. You can see our special guests, Kate and Michelle, joining us. How are you doing this evening?
I realized Kate only put Kate. You know, she didn't add the and Michelle part, which we normally do.
It's a power
when we're on
move.
Rude.
Well, to be fair, so we're
Rude.
recording this on my computer
Mhm.
and it actually because I use StreamYard for all my recordings, it just defaults to Kate.
Uh-huh.
So
Mhm.
sorry
It's
about
fine.
that, Michelle.
We're good.
I
We
mean,
have
it's
a
a power
mimosa in
move.
hand, so all things
Yeah.
are good.
Beautiful. It's like you guys know what segment we're going to talk about first. You guys are drinking the mimosas. Right before I came on here in celebration, I had a grapefruit and pomegranate vodka mixer thing. It's from Dogfish Head. It's like a canned thing, but it was delightful.
Huh.
But Dustin, you and I have moved on to a different brew now. My lovely wife who works at Delta
Mhm.
Beer Lab brought us this hazy IPA. Pretty great. I know you're not as much of an IPA guy as I am, Dustin, but I'm psyched for it. You know why? Because it was free.
You know what? This one's
I love free.
free is always the best cost, but this one's not so bad because it's not like your West Coast IPAs where it's like super dank and burns your taste buds off. So this
That's a
one's
good
all
one.
right.
Yeah. Good use of
I
dank.
haven't heard the
I
word
apologize.
dank since.
Did you say it was
high
a
school.
hazy IPA?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
love
bruh.
that. I
Hazy
like the
IPA.
hazies.
Mm.
It's not as
They're
not
okay.
as tart. It doesn't get you right in the back of the mouth like the way those other ones do. So I'm a fan, Dustin less so. But Dustin, I know you're a fan
It'll work.
of drunk trades and our drunk trade of the week. But I do have to say up to the sad news, we don't have a drunk trade of the week for this week. You know why, listeners? Because you haven't supplied us with a recent drunk trade. So our call to action to you, and in fact to our guests, Kate and Michelle, I think you guys should try to get a drunk trade done in one of your leagues. Maybe it's the league I'm in with you. Maybe it's not, but I think you should do one and then supply it to the show. That's what I say.
Michelle,
I actually did one recently.
now.
I'm trying to find it.
I think most of Michelle's trades are
Ooh.
drunk trades, to be fair.
I did
Yeah.
just do one recently. I paid up for Kyler Murray in a league. I'm trying to see if I can find it quickly. Oh my God, these people never talk. And now
I
all of
had
a
a-
sudden-
You're a Murray
I
fanatic.
did have a drunk trade. If everybody's willing to indulge me, gentlemen, may I have the floor?
Please.
Of
All right,
course.
so-
Floor's yours.
I have this league that's a pain in my butt, and I needed a quarterback very desperately. It's a single quarterback league, but I've been so loaded at every position except quarterback that quarterback is actually for being a single quarterback league, it has been my downfall. It has been an absolute downfall of mine. So I said, no more. I need a good quarterback. And Michelle's been doing all this talking about Brock Purdy, Brock this, Brock that, Brock. So I decided I'm just going to try to go for it. So in a single quarterback, and I felt like I overpaid, and I did what I never do. I broke my cardinal rule. I checked all the trade calculators, and it said I grossly overpaid.
You
So
didn't
I
overpay
felt-
in the slightest. I feel like you're so dramatic about this trade. You
Brock
won.
Purdy
You won easily.
for Marquise Brown, Christian Watson, and a 2025 fourth round pick.
Yeah, you gave up 2 nobodies for Brock Purdy. It's great. Good job.
Hey, now, I will
Now,
not
wait a
stand
second.
behind nobody for
I'm
Christian
talking to two Packers
Watson,
fans.
okay? Now, are his
hear it.
hamstrings nobodies? Sure. His hamstrings are nobodies, but he is not a nobody. That said, I still like that trade. I'm into
Do
that
you?
trade. Dustin,
Yeah.
Okay,
do you agree with that?
I don't think
side?
you overpaid.
Brock Purdy?
So here's
Yeah,
the
I don't think you
thing.
overpaid at all.
I'm firmly of the belief that single quarterback league super flex leagues have ruined the premise of trading for a quarterback in single quarterback leagues because everybody thinks that quarterbacks should be valued as they are. And do you know how long I've been trying to trade for a quarterback in that league and nobody will budge?
It's because you're sending offers like that.
I believe it.
Well, I like every resource I could find confirmed that I thought I was overpaying. But whatever.
She like bullied this guy into accepting. She's like, I am overpaying. No, you're not.
I didn't cry about it.
I would not accept a zillion years. He got
In a single quarterback league?
No.
Okay.
Or you're just giving
I
away
like it.
pretty.
Yeah, I don't mind it
I'm a
at all.
fan.
I
Yeah.
expected
Now I
you-
have my hopes and beliefs for Christian Watson, but I think it's still worth it.
I don't
We don't have to talk about it.
It's okay because we're going to talk up Russell Wilson because we're a Steelers fan. So I guess it's okay that you talk up
Oh,
Christian
God.
Watson.
Hey, well, spoiler
All right.
for you guys. I wrote up Jaden Reed in a little article dropping on PFF tomorrow about players that have the most to gain here in the OTAs, little practice period. Because I think, Michelle, you got it in my head. Why are we sleeping on Jaden Reed?
I don't know. I love him.
Not a single, despite the fact that this is like a very good uptrending offense. And yes, I am hyping y'all up here for the 2024 season. Despite the fact that the Packers are an
Thank you.
ascending offense, not a single, and I know it's the off season, so ADP is you have to take it with a grain of salt, but not a single one of Green Bay's wide receivers is being drafted inside the top 30 at their position. Top 30.
Mhm.
You're telling me
Mhm.
no.
Okay, this is
Jaden Reed
AFC
is-
North show.
That's the
Oh,
best
okay.
analysis.
AFC North.
No.
Is just no. What are we doing? But I like this as a transition between our previous episode, which was the NFC North, and our current episode, which is the AFC North. So you just did a super secret segue from the past episode without even realizing it. That's how good these people are at podcasting. How about that?
Yeah, that's us.
So intuitive.
Take it away, Dustin.
All right, let's get
I love
into
the
it then.
Dustin didn't know what to say before.
we'll
Now
break
he's
down-
just I give up.
Yeah. So we'll just head right into it here. We'll start with your beloved Steelers. Why save the best for last? Let's get the best right out of the way here, huh? So just to remind everybody, we'll go over notable losses and additions. I use air quotes because they're not necessarily notable. And then who they drafted, and then we'll kick it back to you ladies to give us a little overview of what you think of your team. So losses from this offseason: Deontay Johnson, who is now with Carolina. We got Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, all the great quarterbacks. Miles Boykin and Allen Robinson. And they brought aboard, added to the team, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Cordarrelle Patterson, Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, McCole Pruitt, and Scotty Miller. Just a death's row of wide receivers there. So, ladies, why don't you start us off here about how you feel these offseason moves for your Steelers have gone?
So I'll say it gives us optimism, right? Just as soon as you mentioned they got rid of Kenny Pickett, it just brought a smile to my face.
The screams that rang out through our house, the tears of joy that fell down my cheeks, drippities.
Yeah, we were very, very excited. So
Mhm.
anything to go from Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky is a win, right? So excited to have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. It does sting because we love Justin Fields and we'd love to see him get a chance to start again this year. I don't know if that's going to come with the Steelers. I think they'll give Russell Wilson truly his time this year unless he completely falls on his face. But we have optimism after these quarterback moves, especially.
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with the quarterback moves. And I'll be honest, Russell Wilson has always been like an NFL darling of mine. I've always loved the player. I think his, quote unquote demise, obviously year one in the Denver Broncos, that was a disaster. I think the performance of Russell Wilson in 2023 is kind of grossly exaggerated as being more disastrous as it is. Was it great? No. Was it like peak Russell Wilson? No. But was it above average? Yes. And the Steelers went to the playoffs last year with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett. Like, they did not even surpass 26 passing touchdowns as a team last year. Combined, they didn't even surpass 15. And they still made it to the wild card round. Like, you cannot tell me that regardless like of who is under center for this team, that they haven't had a huge upgrade. Then they draft offensive linemen, which was another huge problem for this team. I have a lot of optimism, and I do think that there are going to be more fantasy points to be scored than most people are going to expect here in 2024.
Even with Arthur Miller coming on board as the offensive coordinator.
Listen, no one was more upset about the Arthur Smith hiring.
No. I think he's a better offensive coordinator than we're giving him credit for. I don't think he's a good head coach.
That's what you didn't let me finish my thought. I said, but I'm getting on board now, especially with Russell Wilson there. I do think it's a nice mix, right? If this was the OC they got to fix Kenny Pickett, I would be like, throw this franchise in the garbage. Like, I would be over it completely. But I do think Arthur Smith is a nice match with either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Like, he fits their style, and I do expect him to help out Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. So I am excited to see what Arthur Smith can do.
Nice. So staying on the quarterback then, with Russell Wilson, I'm going to make the assumption that he starts the season. I think he's been told he's going to be the guy, even though there's, competition in camp. Does he start the whole season, or do you think Fields eventually gets on the field?
He'll have plays, right? Fields will get in for rushing touchdowns, I think. But I think this is Russell Wilson's squad this year. And unless there's somehow with a terrible losing record, which they almost never are, and they're already out of the playoffs come week 16, 17, I think Russell Wilson will start the whole year.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mindset here. And I do think that when you're looking at the Steelers schedule, the front half of the schedule a bit easier than the second half. And I do think that they're going to want a veteran like Russell Wilson, who's got loads of experience in the NFL, to be the one leading the charge over Justin Fields, who I think needs to hit the reset button, as much as I love him, in a very, very dramatic way. There are reports out of OTAs today said that they're literally changing his throwing mechanics, and they're going back to basics with Justin Fields. And I do think they're trying to rebuild him, but I don't know that that's conducive to a franchise that I do think they're feeling a little bit of urgency in terms of their window to win with this very expensive defense they've built. I think they are feeling pressure to start to compete very soon.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I don't know if they will compete, but I think they want to compete, which is more than I can say.
Every fan base thinks their team is a Super Bowl contender, though, in May. We'll see how we feel in October, November, because I even started to get excited for the Steelers last August when Kenny Pickett was throwing dimes in the preseason, and he fooled us all.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett, man. He fooled us. He fooled everybody. Everybody thought he was about to be the next Ben Roethlisberger. That didn't work out.
No. I like what you said there. You got a guy with Russell that has the experience. He's been to the Super Bowl, been to the big games, and he's got all that talent. We love Russell Wilson's
Great
talent
people,
on this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that call. I would like to see Justin Fields get a chance at some point, but yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be this year, but hopefully he sits and learns behind Russ and can learn how to be a better quarterback. So maybe a year off will be a good for him. So moving on to the wide receivers on this team, with Deontay Johnson now with Carolina, does George Pickens, is he now going to be an alpha wide receiver? Is he the guy on this team?
So I really, really like him with Russell Wilson. I think this is a great combo. Now, we know in Arthur Smith's offense is going to run the ball a lot. And I think if the Steelers defense can perform how they're supposed to perform, right? the Steeler way where they lock down on defense. You know, TJ Watt getting sack after sack. Like, they are going to lean on the run, but there's really nobody else there to take targets away from Pickens. I mean, I like Roman Wilson, the rookie. I'm sure we'll get into him in a second. But besides that, they traded away Deontay Johnson. Pat Freiermuth is a guy that gets some targets, but why I really like George Pickens with Russell Wilson is because last year, actually just throughout his career, Pickens has struggled to separate, right? Last year, he ranked third lowest in average separation per wide receiver among wide receivers with 75 plus targets. But the thing is, Russell Wilson's so good at targeting those guys. Like, think about the Cortland Suttons and the DK Metcalfs and like those type of players. He's been so good at targeting. But since 2018, Russell Wilson leads the NFL in pass touchdowns on tight window throws. And also like has the second best passer rating in tight window throws as well. Most pass yards per attempt on tight window throws. So I think this is like perfect for the type of wide receiver George Pickens is. Just throw it up to Pickens and we know he's going to come down with the ball.
Yeah, I think that the match there is kind of an interesting one because like he does fit the perfect YOLO kind of mentality that like Russell Wilson has historically clicked pretty well in. And George Pickens in his 4 games without Deontay Johnson in 2023, 20.4 yards per reception, 2.76 yards per route run. He was targeted on just under 26% of his routes run. Like he was the focal point of the offense and he was productive when doing so. And I think he gets a huge upgrade at quarterback in terms of a guy who's both successful in throwing downfield and more willing and to do that more often.
Yeah. So right now, George Pickens is currently he's going off the board 55th overall. So that's what, 6th round, roughly, end of the 5th round. Do you think he's being overvalued right now or undervalued?
Definitely undervalued. I'm shocked he didn't move up higher once they traded for Russell Wilson, once Deontay Johnson get traded. I thought he was going to spike up boards and he hasn't. So if he stays where he's at, he's going to be on pretty much all my teams.
Here's the thing though. I think people are still waiting for the shoe to drop in terms of like trading for a wide receiver. And I think there's still rumors that a big trade could be in the mix for the Steelers. And I think that's kind of like people just waiting for the shoe to drop. Obviously, like George Pickens, very talented, a very high upside wide receiver, but like not a guy that I think everybody pegs as an every down type of dude. But, you know, there's still that possibility, like Brandon Ayuk not coming to terms with this contract extension with the 49ers. So like maybe there is still a possibility there. You have DK Metcalf, like who the Seahawks haven't necessarily turned down a trade for, but financially it doesn't make sense for them until after the June 1st deadline. So like, I think if this, you know, a trade for a secondary wide receiver doesn't come to fruition, I do think we are going to see that draft capital spike up. But again, I think people are just waiting for the other shoe to drop. It feels like the Steelers aren't done yet.
Yeah, so basically wait until August, see if any moves are made, and then go get Pickens if they don't do anything, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
he's going to be the guy.
I feel like if they don't do anything, he's probably going to be a wide receiver, top 15 wide receiver at the worst.
Yeah,
right?
I put him at like wide receiver 15 is his floor if they don't make another move.
Wow, I am severely undervaluing him, and I got to reevaluate my whole life now. Jeez. All right. So you guys brought up Roman Wilson, added to this wide receiver core. I don't really know what to think about this guy. I'm going to be honest. He wasn't super high on my radar coming into rookie drafts. So tell me more about him. Why do you love him? I'm assuming you love him since he's on your squad.
Well, this is exactly who we wanted the Steelers to take. I was hoping they took him in the 2nd round. So for them getting him in the 3rd, I was like ecstatic. He's a great route runner. Like he's going to just fit that Deontay Johnson role really nicely. Now in this Arthur Smith offense, I don't know how big of a role that is, especially in year 1. Even like Deontay Johnson, another 3rd round pick for the Steelers. And we know what he's turned into, but 680 yards, 59 receptions, 5 touchdowns for Deontay in year 1. Like I could see that for Roman Wilson. So not really fantasy relevant, but I think a really nice asset for the Steelers to have and really nice for the quarterbacks there to be able to have another reliable guy with good hands, good route running to lean on.
Yeah, I think like long term, I'm much more excited about his outlook. Most people have kind of pegged him for like this slot role, but I do think that kind of puts him in this box almost where people think like, okay, so he's this, guy that we utilize, around the line of scrimmage. But I mean, a true threat, I think, in terms of the short, intermediate, and deep passing games. Love his ability as a route runner, like never had that, monstrous stat sheet that maybe you saw with some of these other, top tier wide receivers. And he wasn't drafted as a top tier wide receiver, but he was also in a very pro style Michigan offense that was very focused on the run. I mean, JJ McCarthy, like there was a reason people had a lot of questions about JJ McCarthy, even though he often looked the part. It was because he wasn't often asked to play the part. Like the passing game was kind of a afterthought in Michigan, but when he was asked to be that wide receiver one, I
He
love
caught
the way he did it.
12 of JJ McCarthy's 22 touchdowns this year. So that's pretty
I
good.
hear that's good.
Yeah, that's called good football. All
Solid
right, one
ratio.
last question here. Quick answer, and then we'll move on. So, of the running backs, Harris or Warren, and why?
It's Najee Harris. I think somewhat for some reason Najee Harris doesn't like to break out until the month of November, and then he ends up being pretty good. But I do think Arthur Smith helps him out. We know the volume Najee Harris gets throughout his whole career. And then also like the Steelers had such an issue with going 3 and out all the time because their offense stunk. Atlanta somehow only went 3 and out, the 11th lowest rate in the NFL. And that was with Desmond Ridder. And like they stunk, right? You think of the Falcons offense and they stunk, but they somehow were at least on the field for a while. I think that helps out Najee a lot too. Jalen Warren's a fun guy to bring in once in a while, but that's all he is.
I do also want to point out the fact that so a lot of the concern for Najee Harris has been that he doesn't have that burst. Like if they're going to run this zone scheme, like he's not going to be the guy that's going to be able to find these zones, especially get outside. And Najee Harris actually has been cutting weight this offseason. So I don't know if y'all saw this little sneaky headline, which I was very intrigued about. We've all seen Lamar Jackson cutting weight. So has Najee Harris. Best shape of his life.
I was going to say best shape of his life.
But he reportedly lost, I think, 15 pounds ish, which I don't know if you guys remember this guy named Le'Veon Bell, who also came in. I think he played at right around the same weight as Najee, right around 250 pounds. Ended up cutting weight to right around 235 pounds, and boom, had his breakout because suddenly he moved a lot quicker, still had that patience. I do think Najee Harris, generally speaking, if you're looking at the stats, it's not going to pop off the page. But as a fan watching him in 2023, the vision leaps and bounds better than his first 2 seasons. It's been a huge gripe of mine. Just doesn't see the holes, and he saw them in 2023. Hit them with a vengeance. And I do think that he is the prototypical workhorse running back. Jalen Warren, one of the best complementary backs in the league. I don't know that he's going to be a guy that you can give 20 carries a game to. Najee Harris is.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. All right. We will move on here.
All I'm hearing is Najee Harris
move on
top 5 season. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I think it can happen.
Again.
Whew. That's spicy.
Hey, one of these years I'm going to make that prediction. It's going to be accurate. So.
All right. We will move on to the Bengals here. Notable losses: Joe Mixon, AJ McCarron, Tyler Boyd, Irv Smith, and Mitchell Wilcox. And then notable additions: Zach Moss and Mike Gesicki. And in the draft, wide receiver Jermaine Burton, tight end Eric All, and tight end Tanner McLaughlin. Jake, why don't you, since you've been awful quiet here, give us your thoughts about this Bengals team and their offseason?
And his haircut. We need to hear about Joe Burrow's haircut.
We really do. I've only been quiet because my internet is forcing me to be quiet. Because as is a tradition, when the Majukes come on, my internet has to be real shitty like. But I will say, for the Bengals overall, I'm excited, but cautiously so. Because with Joe Burrow, of course, it all comes down to his health. So is he fully healthy? Will he stay fully healthy? The offense goes as Joe Burrow goes. I know that our guests are pretty thrilled with the overhaul that happened into the backfield. Dustin, you and I are pretty excited about the absence, at least, of somebody in that backfield now. So I think we all have a lot to look forward to. I think T. Higgins, we're still trying to figure out if he's going to be with this team come the first day of the season. So there's a lot of question marks with this team, but I'm still pretty optimistic about him overall.
Nice. All right. So I will read this exactly off the show sheet as Jake put it in. Zach Moth truthers, say your piece.
Listen, I feel like I'm his bigger truther at this moment than you are.
Oh my gosh, Michelle, you're being petty.
No, because you haven't been as high on him this year. Like,
No, she's mad because on another podcast we were asked if fully healthy and knowing that either of these running backs would get a full workload, who would you pick, Zach Moss or Rashad Penny? I picked Rashad Penny, and Michelle proceeded to fling herself off the nearest bridge.
no, that wasn't even
because
it. Just a couple weeks ago, we were debating. Never mind. You're not as high as Zach Moss as I am this offseason, and that's okay. I'm the stand.
Okay.
It's okay.
Oh, okay.
But all I'll say is I'm super excited, right? It seems like he's going to get this backfield pretty much to himself. They had 10 draft picks, the Bengals did. They didn't spend a single one on a running back, which is pretty huge.
That was wild.
Yeah.
You need depth.
I
y'all.
really thought they were going to take a running back, and I was sweating it out through the early rounds, but they didn't take any. I know they did change offensive coordinators, but they're just promoting from within, and they've really been a system that's been a one running back dude. So I do think Zach Moss is finally going to get his shot. When we saw him get his shot last year, he was very, very good. I know people like Chase Brown. I'm here to tell you, Chase Brown stinks. I don't know what else to say. He gained Chase Brown, gained 1 or fewer yard on 15 of 44 carries last year. That was 35% of his attempts. Chase Brown led all players in the NFL with a 21 stuff percentage. That means he got stopped at the line of scrimmage or lost yards. He led the NFL among all guys with at least 40 carries, while Zach Moss was at 7.7, again, to Chase Brown's 21% stuff percentage. Moss had the 7th best among those running backs with 40-plus carries. So, Chase Brown was garbage last year. He got no touches inside near the goal line. Zach Moss is going to be the dude there. I don't know what there is to be excited about Chase Brown, but go ahead and draft him if you want.
No, I think people are excited about the element of speed. The Bengals in
He had
general.
2 good runs all year long.
I'm just saying the Bengals in general have not been the fastest of teams. And I think people see Chase Brown and they're like, ooh, big boy, run fast. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the Bengals are planning to utilize him in that way. And I think if you're a team that's pursuing Zach Moss as a free agent, you probably know that the way to utilize him properly is in a volume role. He is not a Chase Brown type running back where he's just going to break off a run. No, he's a physical runner and he needs volume. And I don't think you sign a runner like Zach Moss if you're not planning to get him volume. Because I don't think if you have him in this sort of rotational role, like he had with the Bills, like he had, with the Colts, once, Jonathan Taylor's healthy, you're not getting the most out of the type of runner that he is. So I do think the Bengals,
if Zach Moss stays healthy, he will be a top 10 running back this year.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Chachi.
I don't think that's that spicy.
Like
Yeah. Joe Mixon sucked and he kept doing it. So
yeah, Joe Mixon has been one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL. And he gets enough carries. And yeah, they have a new offensive coordinator, but one that was promoted through the ranks of the Bengals organization. So he's been.
You copied my words.
What?
I used those exact same sentence about a minute ago.
Oh,
It's bookending it. That's what we're bookending the beginning and the end of this take with that.
Joe Mixon has been a volume back. I think they're going to keep utilizing a primary running back, and I think that's the end. Zach Moss, RB1 season incoming.
Yeah,
Probably.
Screaming value come redraft season here is what I hear.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Totally unbiased.
Bookmark that. Gonna highlight him on my little my cheat sheet, and then Jake will do the same, and then we're gonna fight for who drafts him first come our home league.
My 2019 ESPN cheat sheet that I print out every year.
Yep. All right. Moving on. We touched about Joe Burrow and his health, or Jake did, I should say, when we're talking about the intro here. Assuming he stays healthy. I know people are kind of down on him, and with the new quarterbacks kind of coming into the league, this young batch. Really, what is his ceiling? I know he doesn't have the scoot or the running ability that we like to see out of a quarterback. So he's more of that traditional just pocket passer. So really, with this offense, what is his ceiling?
Well, we saw him be quarterback 4 in 2022. I will say, though, there was a really big difference between Joe Burrow and the top 3 guys. So he was quarterback 4 2 seasons ago, averaging 21.9 points per game. But the top 3, and Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, they were all at 24.5 or more points per game. Like, that's a huge difference. That's almost 3 points per game difference. And I think that's the difference between those difference-making quarterbacks that, like, win you leagues, and then just, like, 21.9 points per game is great, right? Like, you're going to take that. You're going to be really happy with that season, but not if you have to draft him too early. But luckily this year, you don't really have to. So I was down on him last year because I didn't want to draft him that high. But now with the injury coming back from that, and after like just a bad year all around, right? He's going lower. So I do think he's an okay draft pick, but still he has too many games where he just kind of doesn't do all that much for fantasy.
Does the availability of T. Higgins factor into that at all? Like, let's say these two sides cannot come to an agreement on a long-term deal before the deadline. T. Higgins, like, he doesn't want to be in Cincinnati. They agree to trade him. And it is Jamar Chase and Jermaine Burton. Does that change the outlook of Joe Burrow's ceiling for you then? Because it does for me.
Well, yeah, it puts him down more, but I even say, like, if T. Higgins is still there, we saw his ceiling, I think, in 2022, which is a fine bar. I just don't think he has that ceiling to be a top 3, like, game changer. Yeah, week changing fantasy quarterback. That's
Yeah, I agree. And I loved him coming out, and loved what I saw from him those first couple years, but like I said, he just doesn't have that rushing ability that we like to see for fantasy. And that's what really puts him behind some of these other quarterbacks that have been coming into the league the last couple of years. All right. And we've talked about T. Higgins. 1, do you think he stays on the team? But 2, is he going to be a wide receiver 1? Can Joe Burrow support 2 wide receiver 1s with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? Is this finally going to happen?
What if we say more like wide receiver 15 to 18? I don't know about a wide receiver 1.
That was not the question.
If Jamar Chase is healthy all year, he's probably not going to finish as a wide receiver 1. It's been a while since we got to see him healthy, right? He barely got to play with Joe Burrow at all healthy last year, but in the 9 games that T. Higgins played at least 30 snaps, which is a low amount of snaps, right? In a normal game where he's healthy, he's going to play between 50 and 60. So just the 9 games last year, he played at least 30 snaps. He averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game in full PPR. Like, that's like around wide receiver 20-ish. That's fine. And that's even counting one game. He had 0 points with the week 1 with the 8 targets and 0 receptions. So, like, I think he'll come back and be a really nice value, because right now he's going pretty late in drafts. Like, I think he's a really nice value, but I still think his ceiling is probably like wide receiver 15 if Jamar Chase is healthy all year long.
Here's the thing. It also feels like it's been a long time, like, not just since we saw T. Higgins healthy, but like we also just given the Joe Burrow health issues, like it also feels like it's been a while since we've seen the 3 of them fully healthy together, like in the same symbiotic bubble. So like, I do think that's something worth considering too, is that maybe we just really haven't seen the ceiling with all 3 of these guys in their fully healthy states and how they could work together in terms of generating efficiency for the offense. Like, all 3 of them healthy, this could be a very, very high upside passing game. I don't think anybody's questioning that. It's just, I'm kind of skeptical that T. Higgins will play for the Bengals this year.
Really? Where would you think he gets traded to? I think he's easily on the Bengals.
It just seems like a very tense situation right now. And obviously contract situations are tense, but T. Higgins wants an extension. The Bengals, I just can't figure out a way where they can conceivably do that. Like, you still have to get Jamar Chase under contract, which I have a feeling he's going to reset the market for the wide receiver position, one that's already been reset time and time again. We've seen, I mean, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, like we've seen all of these extensions this offseason. And then you have to do that times 2 and then some to get both of these guys under contract. So like, they don't really have any wiggle room. I don't think they can conceivably pay him. I do think the Bengals are an organization that like, hey, they were going to release Joe Mixon this year and they held out and they ended up getting, a late round draft pick compensation. Like, I could picture them doing something similar with T, where it's like, all right, like, we don't want hostages here. Let's just recoup some draft stock for him while we can and send him off so he can play and we don't have to deal with the headache. Like,
I think they would have done that before the draft, though. I think he plays for the Bengals this year.
I don't know. Patriots might be willing to pay him a whole lot of money.
Yeah,
I was going to say the Giants. See T. Higgins and
T. Higgins and Malik Neighbors.
That'd be interesting.
I'd
be great for Daniel
They
Jones.
still got Daniel Jones.
Yeah, if Joe Burrow can't support 2 wide receivers, I don't think Daniel Jones is in the position to make it happen anytime soon. But like, I mean, he would do wonders to open up that offense, and his skill set very different from that of Malik Neighbors. Like, that could be an interesting fit from like a real life NFL perspective. But
I think they ended just paying both. And I think,
how? Where?
So the Eagles right now are paying Jalen Hurts over $50 million a year. They're paying AJ Brown over $30 million a year, and they're playing Devonta Smith. Oh, what, $27 million a year? You can figure it out. The cap's going up every year.
Okay.
It'll be, I think they figure it out. I think right now they'd be smart to just pay T. Higgins, because right now he's cheaper than he will be if he goes off next year. Like, he's had 2 injury riddled years. You can get him on the cheaper end by like a couple $1 million. Sign him for $25 million a year and let's go. Just move on.
That's the thing about all these teams that just don't want to pay their really good players, and they're like holding out for like.
Think about if the Vikings and the Cowboys just paid Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb last year, they would have saved so much money. They're so stupid.
So stupid.
All right, we could sit and talk about this all night. Let's keep moving forward here. We'll move to the Browns, I guess, because we have to talk about them. I know, and no one likes it, but we're professionals here. We have to do it. So they lost this offseason Jeff Driscoll, Gus Edwards, Kareem Hunt, Marquise Goodwin, and Harrison Bryant. They brought on board Jerry Jeudy, Jameis Winston, Naheem Hines, Tyler Huntley, Deonta Foreman, and James Prochet. And in the draft, the only fantasy relevant was in the 5th round of Jamari Thrash. Ladies, take it away.
So I do like the moves they made to bring in Ken Dorsey. I will say that as their new OC. I like that change. I do unfortunately think Deshaun Watson is going to have a bounce back season. I think he's probably the best value in drafts among quarterbacks. I think he's probably going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. Obviously, I'm not rooting for that. I don't want that to happen.
Is all of that based on on what addition? Is it the addition of Jerry Jeudy that moves the needle for you that much?
No, it's a change of the OC. I think Ken Dorsey knows how to use quarterbacks with Josh Allen and Cam Newton, I think was the other guy. Am I wrong there? It was 2 guys that were just like Deshaun Watson. Yeah, it was Cam Newton and Josh Allen. So those guys were stellar underneath Ken Dorsey. He's going to pass a way more. Just think about Ken Dorsey refused to run last year, or like in any year with the Bills, right? Nick Chubb's coming off devastating knee injury. They only have Jerome Ford and Deonta Foreman. They don't really have anyone to run with. I think they're going to throw a ton. I think Amari Cooper is a really, really good wide receiver. Jerry Judy's pointless, but like Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, like, is he even still on that team? I don't know. But they can all mix in together to be okay. Jake is shaking his head. No, Donovan Peoples-Jones not. Is he on Detroit now? Where is he? Okay.
Detroit. I think so.
And
he was
then
halfway through last season, I think. Yeah.
And then you also have David Njoku, right? So I think Amari Cooper has a huge year. I personally am not high in David Njoku whatsoever. I think he's just a throwing your pick in the trash kind of pick.
Jeez.
But you like David Njoku.
I like David Njoku because I think it's going to be very hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, you unlocked his efficiency as a receiving tight end option. And like, why wouldn't you want to target him? He's a giant, tall dude who can play the middle of the field. He can produce yards after the catch. Like, there's not a ton that he can't do in terms of his physicality, his athleticism, his size. Like, he's got the ideals across the board. It's just like Deshaun Watson needs to figure out how to use them.
But so the first 6 years of his career, no one could figure out how to use him, right? Because he never had more than 4 touchdowns, never had more than 640 receiving yards in a season. Last year, he breaks out, but not until Joe Flacco comes. Joe Flacco, who loves his tight ends. He loves nothing more than to target a tight end. And literally, David Njoku was having another disastrous year until Joe Flacco came in. So weeks 1
So was Deshaun Watson.
I know.
It's going to have kind of an impact.
But we've seen Deshaun Watson be good before in his career.
Yeah.
We've never seen David Njoku be good.
How long ago was that? That was like,
I hope Watson's bad. That's not the point.
I think that was like,
I'm focusing on David
2021?
Njoku.
2021? 2020.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah, 2020 was the last time we saw Deshaun Watson play good football.
Maybe it was 2021. Anyways, it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking about. David Njoku, weeks 1 through 13, averaged 42 receiving yards per game and had 2 total receiving touchdowns, averaged 7.3 fantasy points per game. So pretty much the whole entire fantasy season. And then if you got lucky and picked him up off of waivers, where he would have been before when they, signed Joe Flacco, you had those huge weeks during the fantasy championship and playoffs. I get it. That's with Joe Flacco only, weeks 14 through 19. He didn't play in week 18. Averaged 93 receiving yards per game, had 4 touchdowns, and averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game. All of his fantasy points came in that 4-week span. And that is just where it came from. So I'm not drafting David Njoku where he's going. If he was like a last round pick, maybe, but he's like a 9th round pick.
Last round pick?
Even then, I might not take him.
Jeez. If you're going to be optimistic for this offense, I think like looking at their receiving core, Jerry Jeudy is an upgrade over.
Well, think about how good Deshaun Watson was within Houston, and he only had Hopkins. It's not like he passed to a tight end.
No, but
sometimes he had Will Fuller.
I think David Njoku is the second best receiver on that football team.
Maybe.
So if he is effectively the wide receiver 2 on this offense that you think is going to focus heavily on the pass, I'll take David Njoku.
You do it.
I can't get on board.
Do it. Be your bet.
More. Also, the thing about Watson is he's going to run more. He's going to pass more and run more because that's what Ken Dorsey does. He runs with his quarterbacks.
Okay.
Again, I'm not beer betting that because I don't want Watson to be good. I will beer bet David and
tight end 10 or better or worse. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Tight end 10.
Even though he was tight end 9 in 2022 and he was absolute garbage. So like he did nothing in 2022.
But tight end 10 is around where he's being drafted.
Tight end 8 or higher or lower, because if you're a tight end 8, 9, or 10, you were useless anyways.
No, because I don't believe he's going to be a top 6 tight end. I think top 10 tight end is.
Then why are you even drafting him?
Because I'm just saying that's where he's being drafted. I think his draft cost is very fair.
Okay.
I'll take the under. I'll get in on this.
Get a little of that action.
All right.
I love it.
All right. I feel like that's enough tight end talk here. We can only handle so much of that on our pod here. So you've already said Amari Cooper is the guy. So is Jerry Jeudy just nothing? Does he do anything for this offense? Would you rather have Elijah Moore over Jerry Jeudy as a part of this offense? Outside of Amari Cooper, personally, I just don't care about any of the options.
I really, really like Amari Cooper this year and his value. I don't really care about Jerry Jeudy or Elijah Moore. I think Jerry Judy's a fine addition to the Browns offense to like help the whole offense. Maybe like in an actual NFL team, it helps, but they way overpaid him anyways. But Amari Cooper is going at wide receiver 29 price right now. Last year, he was wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game. The year before that, he was wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game. So even with this like rotate this carousel of quarterbacks going through the Browns those last 2 years with Watson being suspended or injured, like still wide receiver 17 throughout that span. So right off the bat, a great value. But even like looking at last year, all 5 of Watson's touchdowns or all 5 of Cooper's touchdowns came from either Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco. And he also had 75 plus receiving yards in 9 games played in 2023. But like it was either like the good games are really, really bad because all the other games were under 40 receiving yards. But 5 of those 7 games with under 40 receiving yards were with either Dorian Thompson-Robinson or PJ Walker. Like really hoping quarterbacks like that are not playing this year for the Browns, right? Like he only had 1 bad game each for fantasy with Deshaun Watson and with Joe Flacco. I brought up the Ken Dorsey stuff. I expect them to pass way more often. So I think Amari Cooper is a really, really nice value.
I'm not gonna.
I don't know.
Nice.
I don't know if I can get on
We
board.
do this every
I have a
year,
love-hate
Dustin.
relationship. Yep, I know. I think this is my out year.
I
Was
have
last
never
year
been
in?
on the
I don't
Amari
know.
Cooper train.
The
Ever.
cost is just so minimal. Like I don't think you're risking a ton to invest like in Amari Cooper as a wide receiver. And I mean, you look at the rest of the receiving core, like I don't think Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, as much as I love Elijah Moore, had loved him coming out of Ole Miss. Like I thought there was a lot more in the tank here, but like it's Amari Cooper, and there's a very big tier break between him and the other receivers. Like there's no question he's top dog. Like he is so by far and away the top receiver on this team. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Get on board, Dustin.
I'll try. No promises. All right. One last question here about the Browns before we finish off with the Ravens. You already touched on it a little bit with this backfield and Nick Chubb coming back from injury. Jerome Ford, can he be a thing, or is Deonta Foreman gonna eat into that value there?
I think Deonta Foreman's a pretty solid running back. I really do. So if they plan to make him active to start this year, I think like already Jerome Ford was up and down and inconsistent with touches. Again, to bring up Ken Dorsey, doesn't use the running back ever. Maybe that was on Josh Allen. Maybe it was on Dorsey. I guess we don't know. But all of a sudden, James Cook got touches when Dorsey was gone. So I feel like it was on Ken Dorsey. I'm off of the running backs in this backfield. I don't want any of them. If I had to take a sneaky one, it would be Foreman. And maybe he gets in some touchdowns before Nick Chubb comes back fully healthy. But I'm kind of just staying away.
I think Jerome Ford is a fine flyer, although I do think like we kind of saw last year, even when he was in a primary role, he was an RB2. And, the nice thing is you're probably not going to have to draft him as an RB2. You're probably going to draft him much later. So like he's a guy that I could actually picture having a decent number of shares on when it all is said and done. I do have a hard time believing that Nick Chubb is going to come back from this disastrous knee injury, which was the same knee injury he had already, or the same knee he had already suffered another devastating injury on prior, like, and just be Nick Chubb again. And I'm rooting for him. I think Nick Chubb, a very talented running back, excellent runner when healthy, is going to be, among the top 5 in the National Football League. But I still have a hard time believing that he is going to be able to jump back into the mix here day one and carry the team in the way that he could have last season. Like,
let me ask you all, Jerome Ford or Kendry Miller from the Saints?
Kendry Miller.
Miller.
Okay. So that answers it.
Yay,
Miller's
consensus.
Miller just has much higher upside, but I can tell you, I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to be a Saint come the start of.
So then
this
Kendry
season.
Miller's cost is going to go way up.
Yes. So I don't think they're probably going to be that comparable.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish this off here, shall we, with the Ravens. Notable losses: J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Dalvin Cook, OBJ, and Devin Duvernay. And they brought on board Derrick Henry and Deontay Hardy. And in the draft, a couple of wide receivers in Devontae Walker and Rashid Ali. And then quarterback Devin Leary. Jake, I'm going to throw this back to you to give us a little overview about this offseason for the Ravens and what you think about this team.
Here's what I like. Here's what I like about the Ravens. Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
He came on board. That's as much as you really need to focus on, I think, for this particular offense. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's going to be Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers should be useful. Andrews is always going to be Andrews. But Derrick Henry really opens up a facet of this offense that they haven't had before, and I can't wait to see it. I'm probably going to be way too high on him in redraft, but I think just in general, he's going to make this offense hum quite a lot. So he's going to raise the fantasy values of basically everybody there to some extent. And I think you're going to get actually more value out of the players because people are afraid that Derrick Henry is going to be detrimental to everybody else. And I disagree.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it over to you, ladies here. Stay on Derrick Henry here. Are you afraid of the cliff? Do you think it's finally going to come for him? We've been talking about it for years. It just hasn't happened. Personally, I'm not going to bet against it until I finally see it with my own eyes. I think this is a perfect fit in this offense for him. But what say you?
Derrick Henry's not human, right?
No.
And also with those years that who was the coach that like refused to use Derrick Henry? We need to go thank him, right? Like whoever you chose to use, what was it? Damian Lewis? Is it Damian Lewis?
Yeah.
Damian Lewis, the little tiny guy.
Mhm.
Instead
Deion
of Derrick
Lewis, yeah.
Henry, like, thank you. Because it's saving him for the rest of his life, apparently. He's just going to be ready to go forever. But like, I'm not worried about it because he's changing from a disastrous Titans team to one of the best offenses in the league and best run games in the league. But also, like last year, at 29 years old in a terrible offense, Henry had 9 games with 15 plus fantasy points. That was the second most among running backs behind only Christian McCaffrey. And then over the last 2 years, he's had 12 games with 20 plus fantasy points. Again, only behind Christian McCaffrey. It goes Christian McCaffrey at 16 games of 20 plus points, Derrick Henry at 12. And then the next ones are Austin Eckler and Saquon Barkley at 9. Like he has been so good with those huge games. I know he's had some down games in between, but like he's so good. I love Derrick Henry.
I love Derrick Henry. I think he's going to be so good for this offense. I took a look at next gen stats in terms of like the passing efficiency for the Titans just last year when Derrick Henry was on the field versus off. And like the things he does for an offense in terms of just the pure threat of like, you know, that split second maybe where you don't know if he's going to get the ball or not, that opens up things tremendously for your offense. When Derrick Henry was on the field, he had like stats were better for this passing offense, and the passing offense was more efficient in terms of EPA per drop back, success throw or success rate, average target separation, air yards per attempt, sack rate, pressure rate, completion percentage, yards per attempt. Like Derrick Henry being on that field opens up things in a crazy way. And that was with a passing attack that was very one-dimensional, didn't have like a true rushing quarterback. You put him next to Lamar Jackson, and now you have the threat of like, ooh, who has the ball? Is it Lamar or is it Derrick Henry?
I wouldn't want to be the defenders trying to decide.
No.
That.
And then
No.
if you realize it's Lamar, you're like, well, crap, is he going to pass it or is he going to run it? Like that now that's a 3-tier decision that a defender has to make in terms of covering this defense. Derrick Henry is going to be just fine. Whatever he loses in terms of age or whatever, he's gained in terms of, you know, having that threat of Lamar next to him. It's huge. And this offense is going to have a ton of scoring opportunities. We saw this efficiency from Derrick Henry last year, despite the fact that like actually saw a decrease in his overall snap percentage. And, you know, we saw a lot of involvement from Tajay Spears, and that really did nothing for him because when he was on the field, he got the ball and you got the touches you needed for fantasy points. Like, let's go, Derrick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. So I lied when I said we're not going to talk about tight ends anymore, because Mark Andrews, he's been slipping a little bit. Is he still considered elite? Are we drafting him as one of those top 3 tight ends?
I think it's
I don't
okay
know.
to do so, right? Like I think it's okay to do so. He still has insane upside in any given week. He leads all tight ends with 5 games with 20 plus points, 20 plus fantasy points over the last 2 seasons, while missing 7 games last year and also missing 2 games in 2022 and not playing with Lamar Jackson for a big span of time as well. It's like it goes Mark Andrews at 5 games, Hawkinson, Kittle, and Kelsey each have 4 games, and then nobody else even has any more than that. So like his big games are big and they do win you weeks. So I am fine taking him. He needs to stay healthy and prove that. But like if he's out in the field, he's going to be really great most weeks. It's just now you have so many young, exciting tight ends with Sam Laporta and Trey McBride and Don Kincaid and then still Travis Kelsey. So like I'm okay taking him outside of the top 3, but also he deserves to be right there with all those guys.
Can I tell y'all a secret though? I'm kind of a little bit secretly intrigued by Isaiah Likely. And I know that last year we saw the production come on the back of an injury to Mark Andrews. So I'm not trying to get crazy, but we did see OBJ depart this past season. He ranked 2nd on the Baltimore Ravens offense in terms of targets last year. And I don't think they really did enough to replace him. So you extend Rashad Bateman, great. Like maybe he'll stay healthy. Maybe he'll have 3 targets a game, par for the course. And then you bring in Devontae Walker, who was like, I was not a big fan of coming out. And I just don't think they really did enough to replenish those targets. And a part of me is just kind of wondering, is it because Isaiah Likely was like #good as a receiving option last year? And could Isaiah Likely maybe mix in, a little bit more into this passing game? Like ranked 5th among tight ends, 7.2 yards after the catch per reception in 2023, led all tight ends in passer rating when targeted, ranked only behind George Kittle in yards per reception average. Like he was a very efficient tight end last year. And I do think that maybe there's a role for him, even if like maybe there's a way that him and Mark Andrews can kind of coexist in this offense with the departure of OBJ. And he's like free.
So, well, this is true. But then, so you really don't have high hopes for any of these wide receivers then? Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman.
I really like Zay Flowers. Yeah. I like Zay Flowers this year a lot. We saw him start to come on late last season, average over 17 fantasy points per game from weeks 12 through 18. And that's including week 15 when he scored 1 point. So that kind of really brought down that average as well. Like he started to get really hot. We brought up how Derrick Henry should open up this passing offense, really bring up defenses. He should have even more space to work. And then also you lost OBJ, and that's a lot of targets left behind as well. So I'm excited for Zay Flowers this year. I think he can have a really big season. I think it's going to be up and down, boom or bust. But in best ball, he'd be one of my favorite picks for sure.
Yeah, I think all the reasons that I'm kind of intrigued by Isaiah Likely, I'm also intrigued by Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, obviously a much higher ceiling, a much safer floor. So like, but you're also going to pay up for that. So that's why I wanted to low key shout out Isaiah Likely. But like, yeah, Zay Flowers, I don't know if I'm ready to put him in wide receiver 1 category. I think he's at the very lowest, a wide receiver 2 with weekly wide receiver 1 upside. But I think he's going to benefit tremendously from what Derrick Henry does to this passing game.
Zay Flowers or George Pickens?
Zay Flowers.
Oh, that's rough. I will probably say Pickens, but it's real. That's a tough one.
Dustin, are you sucking up to us?
Never. Oh, come on. I'm better than that. Come on.
Jake, who are you going with?
I had George Pickens as a fringe top 15 wide receiver in my redraft ranking, so I have to go with George Pickens.
It's so close to me. I think Zay Flowers is actually safer.
That's why
George Pickens, they both have a high ceiling. Oh man,
I think it depends on
I'm
what
gonna
you
go
want.
Pickens because I could see him scoring more touchdowns than Zay Flowers. So I'm gonna go with the touchdowns. I'm gonna go with Pickens.
So I guess I'm just the only one.
I think it's really close.
I think
It's
I'm going to give Zay
that's
Flowers the
really
edge
close.
just in terms of having a safer floor, and that's where I'm going to stick.
All right. Well, I think that is a great way to end the show. Before we let you go, because I know you guys got to get leaving here. Why don't you shout out anything you know what you're doing, where we can find you out in the fantasy world, anything you want to promote or shout out right now. We'll give you the floor.
You can find me, Kate, on Twitter or X or whatever at Kate Magdziuk. It's MAGDZIUK. Working over at PFF, Yahoo Fantasy, Locked On Dynasty podcast, 5 days a week. A little bit of everywhere.
You can find me, Michelle, at Bubblast EM. I do a Locked On Fantasy Football show every single day. It's different from her. She's Dynasty. I'm like the normal redraft fantasy football, but it's every day, Monday through Friday. You can find us on any podcasting app. Also do a 49ers podcast every Friday at the Gold Standard. You can find some of my work at NFL.com. And then the rest of the work you can find on Twitter.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for coming back and joining us. It was a lot of fun. Wish we could sit and chat for a couple more hours. I'm sure we could do that without even trying. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, and look forward to chatting with you guys in the future.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Bye,
y'all.
y'all.
All right. Till next week, folks.
Bye.
Keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers.